Thanks so much for tuning in to this conversation. The discretionary, the direct to consumer theme, as I call it, over the last 6 months has actually seen a change which is materially different from the previous 2 years of brutal pain that it went through. You look at QSRs, you look at restaurants in general, you look at malls, or you look at hotels. All of these have almost found a new lease of life, and they are shining brightly there. We are on the cusp of the festive season, a wedding season, and therefore it's pertinent to talk to one of the largest, if not the largest, mid-market hotel players in the country, which is Lemon Tree Hotels, about how they are feeling about the quarter that is coming up. And in order to do that, Vikramjit Singh, who is the president at Lemon Tree Hotels, joins us right now on the show. Vikramjit, great having you. Thanks for joining in. I hope all is well.
Thank you, Neeraj, and thank you for having me on the show.
Well, we are entering a busy festive season and a wedding season, and it's probably only fair to talk to companies which will presumably benefit tremendously from this. Remember, it's an industry. Hotels is an industry which went through a very brutal 2-year period, and they're coming out of it smelling like roses. We have today on the show Mr. Vikramjit Singh. He's president of Lemon Tree Hotels, arguably the largest mid-market hotel chain in the country, having 4 different cohorts of variety of rooms, and therefore his perspective would be great to analyze the demand and the occupancies across segments. Vikramjit, great having you. Thanks for joining in. Hope all is well.
Thank you, Neeraj. Thank you. Things couldn't have been better.
Okay, and I presume that the kind of season that we are entering in, things can actually become better from where they are right now.
Absolutely, Neeraj. See, we are a very seasonal business. So then the first half of the year, the financial year which we are in currently, is typically the low season or the off season. And the kind of numbers, the kind of performance, the kind of rates that you've seen in the off season only tells you what the real season will look like. So like I mentioned, things couldn't be better.
Okay. Can you give us some flavor about this? As I understand, the first half is not as strong as the second half. How has the first half been thus far? ARRs, occupancies, and how does the festive season and the wedding season look like?
Sure, Neeraj. So let me tell you, we started off this fiscal with a very, very robust rate increase. And when I say rate increase, I compare it to the pre-COVID numbers. So we, for example, had reported a 20% rate increase over the same quarter pre-COVID. Even the industry had reported close to 16%. And this, mind you, is the off-season. As we go forward, multiple things will happen. Firstly, foreign travel really hasn't started in India, especially the foreign corporate travel, and even the foreign inbound traveler, the tourist who comes to visit India. So that one segment has really not taken off yet. A lot of large MICE events. While MICE has started, when I say MICE, I mean meetings, incentives, conferences, etc. The smaller ones have started, but the big, large MICE events, the ones where you have a few thousand people, where you have delegates from all across the world coming in, that is only expected to start in the second half of this financial year, which is October, November onwards. Very importantly, India is taking over the presidency of the G20 summit starting end November, early December. This is going to be spread across 55 cities in India. And we see a lot of travel happen to all these 55 cities. And a lot of demand will be across this value chain. It will not just be 5 stars, but it will be 4 stars. It will be mid-market. It will be economy. It will be across the chain. That will bring in a lot of demand, a lot of business to hotel rooms. Apart from that, like I said, the corporate travel is still ramping up. We are still at about 80% of pre-COVID numbers as far as corporate travel is concerned. That also will ramp up, and we see that ramping up gradually month on month, and that alone will be higher than pre-COVID numbers in the second half of the financial year. So all that put together, I see a very robust rate increase over and above the one we've already achieved. We see occupancies going better than pre-COVID numbers. We see a lot of meeting incentives happening. Weddings, like you correctly mentioned, happen mostly in the second half of the year because they are linked to SIRE dates, which typically are in the winters in our country. So all that put together, I think you'll see a very robust second half of this fiscal. And not only that, let me tell you, in our business, what we are seeing is that supply has really diminished, or supply growth has come to a complete halt. If you look at reports where people are talking about a supply growth of 3 to 4%. Demand secularly, we assume, will grow at 8 to 10%, maybe a little more. because that's been the trend for the last 10 years. So if you do the math, demand growing at 10%, supply at 3%, the next 5-6 years are going to be boom. And when I say 5-6 years, is because in our business, unlike an airline, you can't buy an aircraft and add capacity. To build a hotel in this country is a 5-year process. It's a 4 to 5 year process. So the next 4 to 5 years are going to be, in my words, the golden period for the industry.
Mm, that's not music for my ears because I'll have to pay more for my hotel rooms. But okay, let me ask you. I was going to ask you that the last, I mean, during COVID, there were some shutdowns as well that happened of hotels. Maybe some of the not unorganized really, but the non banner hotels also must have seen shutdowns, and therefore it is not just supply growing at 3-4%. A bunch of supply got shut down too. So my question is. That coupled with the revenge tourism, revenge eating out, revenge staycation process that's the world seems to be on currently, do you reckon that these upticks in ARRs could sustain well beyond FY23?
Definitely, and I'll tell you why. And so in India, you see, if you look at the branded space, we only have about 1,65,000 rooms, 1,65,000 rooms. Below that is the whole unbranded space. And if you were to look at reports, I think that space has another 27-28 lakh rooms. My guess is that, this is all guess because the unbranded space doesn't get covered. My guess is that 3 to 4 lakh rooms have shut down completely because of COVID, because of the stress that came upon these individual owners. Either the land was put to alternate use, the hotels were shut down. And mind you, opening a hotel which has been shut down for a few years is not an easy task. So, like I said, 3-4 lakh rooms have disappeared from that unbranded space. Also, what's happened is because of COVID, there's been a very clear shift from the unbranded to the branded because, health has taken precedence over everything. Hygiene, which was not even considered today, which is just a table stake today, is a differentiator. And obviously, brands get preference when people look at choosing a hotel on the basis of these parameters. So I see two things happening. I see, firstly, the shift from the unbranded to the branded. Like I mentioned earlier, the fact that supply is not going to grow. And more importantly, there is a lot of pent-up demand, which is not even started playing out. Fourthly, third and fourth, two more points, like I mentioned earlier as well, is that a lot of new events are going to come up. A lot of MICE events have not started yet. The G20 summit will bring in a lot of additional demand. All that put together, my guess is that the next 4 to 5 years will be the Sunehra period for the industry.
Sunehra period. Okay. So how Sunehra can this be? Let's first talk about what's the growth that you envisage in H2 over H1, since H1 also has been so strong. And how does it translate in terms of numbers? And then I'll get to a couple of finer points as well. But since you've brought in the Sunehra period argument, I'm trying to understand what are the kind of revenue, margin, bottom line numbers that you envisage for example.
So like I said, I don't want to give a guidance, but I'll give you a flavor.
Sure.
So I'll tell you, typically in our business and in the hotel business I'm talking about, 40 to 42% of the revenue comes in the first half of the year and 58 to 60%. So that tells you that if H1 contribution is 42%, you know what H2 will be like. So that's one glimpse into the future. Secondly, what will also happen is that in the second half of the year, a lot of other revenue generators kick in. So the wedding season kicks in. You see, foreign travel kicks in because foreigners typically come into India in the second half of the year. G20, again, I've mentioned, a lot of big, large meetings, big, large conferences happen. So all that put together, we also see a rate hike in H2. And my guess is, like I said, it's only a guess, but I think from the current levels, which are already 20% higher than pre-COVID numbers, I see another 15 to 20% rate hike happening. So that gives you a flavor of what the second half of the year is going to look like.
No, if the second half,
all my fingers are crossed too.
No, what I mean is, if the second half normally is 60%, without the uptick in rates that you are talking about, could it be that this year it might be even more?
The 60% is because of the factors that I mentioned.
Okay, fine. Including the rate hike.
Including all the factors, the additional revenue stream because of weddings, because of large meetings, conferences, because of foreign travel, the inbound travel kicking in, all of that put together is the reason for that 42 to 58% hike.
Got it. Okay.
That's what takes 42 to 58%. That's what I
okay.
mean.
Okay. Do you envisage capex drive happening for the sector at large? I presume you guys are have announced some capex, right? Maybe 2,400, 2,500 rooms getting operational by 2025, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, we are pretty much at the end of our capex cycle, because as a company, we are now going asset light.
Okay.
See, but we've got a big chunky capital allocation, which is currently in our Mumbai hotel. So we're building a 669 room hotel at the Mumbai International Airport.
Mm-hmm.
So that, and a small one in Shimla, which is about 65 rooms. So barring that, we are not investing any more capital. So our entire growth is now in the asset light space. We are signing a lot of hotels. We are adding. So a lot of our inventory going forward will all be in the asset light space, where we will be managing franchising hotels which are owned by third party or individual owners.
Okay. A note says that there'll be about 2,400 rooms becoming operational by 2025. Is this a mix of
it's a
both
mix
the
of,
things?
like I said, the owned space will have 669 in Bombay and another 60 odd in Shimla. The rest of it will all be in the asset light space. In fact, that number is now grown to about 2,795 to 2,800 rooms. Because, like I said, we are aggressively signing a lot more hotels. And when all this comes together, we will be about 115, 116 hotels in about 69 cities in India and a little over 11,000 rooms. This is as of today. And like I said, this is a moving number. We keep signing hotels. So the next time you and I chat will be a very different number.
Okay. In which case, Vikramjit, would estimates of, say, maybe about a CAGR rate of 30 odd % revenue, 50 odd % bottom line for the next 3-4 years? I'm not asking you to give me a specific number, because as you said, the numbers will change, but are these outlandish or are these realistic?
See, we've said that we will do a 50% margin this year itself. So that's what we are aiming at. We've already achieved a margin of 48.2% in Q1, which we've reported. So margins will only improve, because I'll tell you what's happened with COVID. A lot of cost rationalization has happened. Today, hotels look at costs very differently, and it's a pity that it took a pandemic to teach us that. But I think we were all going through the curse of success, and sometimes with the curse of success breeds in some kind of inefficiencies in the system. So I think with COVID, all that has been ruled out. And the good part is that while the revenues are back, the average rates are higher, and it's going to go even higher, the cost structure has remained. And that's going to be the big differentiator for the industry in general, not just Lemon Tree Hotels. And that's why I think, so I repeat my Sonera period argument again.
And therefore, you're telling me that it's not outlandish. Whatever the number may be, it's not outlandish.
Like I said, I won't give guidance, but I've given you a flavor of what the future looks like. No supply coming up, demand growing, rates very robust, costs very lean. So it can't get better.
Great. Well, in which case, wish you all the best for the festive season. Have a great one, and looking forward to more conversations.
Thank you, Neeraj. Thank you for having me on. Thank you.
The pleasure was ours. Viewers, thanks for tuning in.